In the last video, we broke down exactly where your paycheck should go. But here's where most people mess up. They think everything is a need when most things are actually wants. And that one mistake is why they can't save money, can't invest, and end up living paycheck to paycheck. Today, we're going to fix that. By the end of this video, you'll have crystal clear clarity on what's actually a need and what's a want. And more importantly, you'll understand why this distinction is the single most important rule in personal finance. Let's get into it. Why this matters more than you think. Before we dive into the specifics, let me tell you why this is so critical. Every single financial decision you make comes down to one question. Is this a need or a want? If it's a need, you have to find a way to pay for it. If it's a want, you get to decide if it's worth the trade-off. But here's the problem. Most people have convinced themselves that their wants are needs. And when you do that, you lose all control over your finances. Let me give you an example. Someone says, "I need a car." Okay, but do you need a $50,000 truck? Or do you need transportation? Those are two very different things. One is a legitimate need, the other is a want disguised as a need. This happens all the time. I need a new phone. No, you need a phone. Your 2-year-old iPhone works fine. You want the latest model. I need to live in this apartment. No, you need shelter. You want this specific apartment in this specific neighborhood. See the difference? When you're honest about what's actually a need versus what's a want, you take back control of your money, the real definition of a need. So let's start with the basics. What is a need? A need is something that is essential for survival and basic functioning in modern society. We're not talking about surviving in the wilderness. We're talking about being a functional adult in America in 2025. Here are the real needs: housing, food, basic clothing, transportation to work, utilities like electricity and water, basic healthcare and insurance. Notice what's not on that list. Entertainment is not a need. The latest fashion is not a need. Eating at restaurants is not a need. A brand new car is not a need. A big house in a fancy neighborhood is not a need. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Within each category of needs, there's a huge spectrum from basic to luxury. You need housing, but you don't need a 3-bedroom apartment downtown. You need food, but you don't need organic grass-fed everything from Whole Foods. You need transportation, but you don't need a BMW. This is where people get it twisted. They take a legitimate need and inflate it with wants, then justify the whole thing as a need. The need versus want test. Let me give you a simple test you can use for any purchase. Ask yourself these 3 questions. Question 1, will I suffer significant harm without this? And by harm, I mean actual harm, not just inconvenience or disappointment. Will you be unable to work? Will you be homeless? Will you go hungry? If the answer is yes, it's probably a need. Question 2. Is there a cheaper alternative that meets the same core need? If you need transportation and you're looking at a $40,000 SUV, but a $10,000 used sedan would get you to work just fine, then the SUV is a want. Question 3. Am I buying this because I actually need it, or because I want to feel a certain way? This is the big one. So many purchases are emotional. We want to feel successful, attractive, comfortable, or entertained. Those feelings are valid, but they're wants, not needs. Let's apply this test to some real examples. Example 1, you're thinking about upgrading your phone. Your current phone works, but it's a little slow. Question 1, will you suffer significant harm without the new phone? Question 2, is there a cheaper alternative? Yes, you could keep your current phone or buy a budget model. Question 3, are you buying this for a feeling? Probably yes. You want the excitement of something new or the status of the latest model. Verdict: this is a want, not a need. Example 2, your only pair of work shoes has holes in the soles. Question 1, will you suffer harm without new shoes? Yes, you need appropriate footwear for work. Question 2, is there a cheaper alternative? You need shoes, but you could buy affordable ones instead of designer ones. Question 3, is this emotional? No, this is functional. Verdict: shoes are a need, but expensive designer shoes are a want. See how this works? The framework helps you be honest with yourself. The gray areas, let's get specific. Now, let's talk about the categories that confuse everyone because they're not black and white. First, housing. You need shelter. That's non-negotiable. But here's what Americans have convinced themselves. They need to live alone. They need a nice neighborhood. They need modern appliances. They need a parking spot. They need a gym in the building. Wrong. Those are all wants. A need is a safe place to sleep with basic utilities. Everything beyond that is a want. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have those things, but call them what they are. If you're spending $2,000 a month on a one-bedroom apartment when you could spend $1,200 sharing a two-bedroom with a roommate, you're choosing to spend $800 a month on wants. That's almost $10,000 a year that could go into investments. Second, food. You need nutrition. You don't need DoorDash 5 times a week. You don't need Starbucks every morning. You don't need to eat out for lunch every day at work. Here's a reality check. The average American spends over $3,000 a year on coffee. $3,000. That's not a need. That's a habitual want that you've normalized. Cooking at home is cheap. Rice, beans, chicken, vegetables, pasta, eggs. You can eat healthy meals for $5 to $7 a day. But most people spend $15 to $20 a day on food because they've conflated convenience and preference with necessity. Third, transportation. You need to get to work, but do you need a car? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on where you live. In New York City, a car is a want. Public transit works fine. In rural Texas, a car is a need. There's no other option. But even if you need a car, you don't need a new car. The average new car payment in America right now is over $700 a month. That's insane. You can buy a reliable used car for $8,000 to $12,000 cash. A Honda Civic or Toyota Corolla from 2015 will run for years. If you're making car payments on a new vehicle, you're prioritizing wants over wealth building. And that's fine if it's a conscious choice, but don't lie to yourself and call it a need. Fourth, your phone and internet. Okay, in modern America, having a phone and internet access is pretty close to a need. You need them for work, for communication, for accessing essential services. But you don't need the unlimited premium plan. You don't need the fastest internet speeds. You don't need to upgrade your phone every year. A basic phone plan costs $30 to $40 a month. Basic internet is $50 to $60. If you're paying more than that, the extra is a want. The lifestyle creep trap. Here's where this need versus want thing becomes really dangerous. Lifestyle creep. This is when your wants slowly start to feel like needs because you've gotten used to them. 10 years ago, nobody needed Netflix, Spotify, Hulu, Disney+, HBO Max, and Amazon Prime. Now people act like they'll die without all 6 subscriptions. That's $40 to $60 a month on entertainment. Over $700 a year. That's not a need. That's lifestyle creep. Same with food delivery. DoorDash didn't exist 15 years ago. Somehow humanity survived. Now people treat it like a utility they can't live without. Here's the trap. Every time your income goes up, your lifestyle inflates to match it. You get a raise and suddenly you need a nicer apartment. You get a promotion and now you need a better car. Before you know it, you're making 6 figures and still living paycheck to paycheck because your wants have grown faster than your income. The fix? Lock in your lifestyle. When you get a raise, don't inflate your spending. Keep living on your old budget and invest the difference. This is how you actually build wealth. The 80-20 rule for needs. Here's a rule that'll change how you think about this. 80% of your satisfaction comes from 20% of your spending. Most of your spending is on stuff that doesn't actually make you happier. Think about it. That $7 coffee from Starbucks gives you maybe 5 minutes of pleasure, but then it's gone and you've forgotten about it. Meanwhile, that same $7 invested every single day for 30 years at 8% returns would be worth over $300,000. I'm not saying never buy coffee. I'm saying be intentional. Recognize that it's a want, budget for it in your lifestyle category, and don't let it creep into your needs category. The stuff that actually matters, your health, your relationships, your sense of purpose, those things cost way less than you think. Time with friends costs nothing. Exercise costs nothing. Reading costs almost nothing. But we ignore those things and blow money on wants that give us a temporary dopamine hit. How to actually implement this? Okay, so you understand the difference between needs and wants. Now what? How do you actually use this information? Step 1. Audit your spending. Go through your bank statements from the last 3 months. Categorize every single expense as either a need or a want. Be brutally honest. That Amazon purchase? Want. That Uber Eats order? Want. That streaming subscription you forgot you had? Want. Step 2. Calculate what percentage of your income is going to needs versus wants. If more than 60% is going to needs, you either need to increase your income or decrease your housing and transportation costs. If more than 20% is going to wants, you need to cut back. Step 3. For every want, ask yourself if it's worth the trade-off. That $70 dinner out? That's 10 hours of investment growth you're giving up. That $300 concert ticket? That's a week of groceries or a month of investing. Make the trade-off conscious, not automatic. Step 4. Delay gratification. This is the secret. When you want something, wait 30 days. If you still want it after 30 days and it fits in your budget, buy it. Most of the time, you'll realize you didn't actually want it that bad. You just wanted the feeling of buying something new. The uncomfortable truth. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Most Americans are broke because they're spending money on wants and calling them needs. They're not victims of the economy. They're not unlucky. They're just bad at distinguishing between the two. You can't build wealth if you're spending every dollar you earn, and you can't save money if you think everything is a need. It's that simple. I know this is uncomfortable. I know it feels restrictive. But here's what's actually restrictive. Being 65 years old with no retirement savings. Being stuck in a job you hate because you can't afford to quit. Living paycheck to paycheck for your entire life. That's restrictive. Delayed gratification is freedom. Final thoughts. So here's the bottom line. A need is something essential for survival and basic functioning. Everything else is a want, and the faster you get honest about this, the faster you'll take control of your finances. In the next video, we're going to talk about the biggest money mistakes people make in their 20s. Because understanding needs versus wants is great, but there are specific mistakes that will derail your financial life before it even starts. If this video helped you see your spending differently, let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.